Well, we read Jambulatry, which was written by Monica Arakde Nyeko, and it was this beautiful love story coming out of Uganda. And there was something about the way that she wrote, and she wrote her characters and the world that she created that was just so beautiful. And it just felt so cinematic just reading it. And I really wanted to turn it into a film. My producer, Stephen Markovitz, was, at the time, he was looking to try and create a slate of films that turned modern literature, modern African literature into film. So when we found this story, we then embarked on a 7-year journey of fundraising, which is like, it took everything. And unfortunately, we couldn't find any financing from Africa, so we went around the world and found 7 co-producers from Europe and the States. I think a lot of people felt that they didn't want to offend African governments by being a part of this film. So they decided that they'd rather not invest in the film. It's set in Nairobi. It's set in a really small estate within Nairobi. And when I knew the location that I wanted to shoot in the moment we decided to set it in Nairobi. And then when the co-writer came on board, we rewrote with the location in mind. So everything was written according to that location and how it played out and the dynamics and the characters within that location. So it was actually quite fortunate that we later got permission to shoot there. Otherwise, I think it would have been a bit tricky to create a space that you then can't shoot in. It was a very tight shoot. It was about 23, 24 days of shoot. It was an incredibly tight turnover, and we just worked we just worked straight. We worked like 3-4 weeks straight. Well, 3.5 weeks straight. And it was just the most intense experience. But also incredibly beautiful because we had such a supportive cast who had agreed to take on these roles knowing that they might be difficult and knowing that once the film was released, it could cause a problem. But they were very diligent about the conversations they had and also their approach to their family. They were very careful to speak to their family about the roles. But other than that, other than the tightness of the schedule, it was a joy. I really like working in Kenya. It was quite basic because we knew that we had a very, very tight schedule. And so we had to pack in as much as possible. And because my actors were so young and so new to film, I wanted to try and keep anything that was emotionally complicated for the end and use any lighter scenes at the beginning, so also as actresses they could get to know each other and get a sense of each other. But I like working with actors. I'm a very actor-driven filmmaker, and it was important for me to just to carve out that space so that the actors can have a world that they trust, and knowing the subject matter and how our general community would take it. It was incredibly important to also make them feel safe. When we started to create Rafiki, when we started to shoot it, I knew that I wanted to tell the story of the film through color and through sound in a very particular way. I wanted to make sure that the world that they live in, because of Nairobi's already a naturally colorful place, I wanted that the Nairobi that we know and we live in, which is very saturated already, to feel as if it was claustrophobic and almost oppressive in its noise and color and sound, and it was something that crowded in on the girls. And then later when they were together, we wanted to make it light and more pastel and give that a feeling of a sense of freedom and everything. But also in the wardrobe, what we did is that through the journey of the film, the color that the girls would wear began to look more similar or were more compatible with each other. And we worked that through to the end. But the references that we kept making was the idea that they had a delicate color, that would then be crushed later, as if you crush the kind of colors that you find if you crush petals or you trample on something fresh, and and we weaved the story of the color through the film as part of it. And we did the same thing with the sound. We would take out the sound when the girls were together and make it really about them and their space. And then when they were in their own worlds, apart from the relationship, it was noisy. It felt like people were always listening in on your conversations. It felt like people were always gossiping about you. So there was always voices and sounds and music kind of like filtering in on their world and being kind of just an antagonistic force almost. And that's how we wanted to create the world around them. So the Rafiki soundtrack is out, which we're really excited about. But the way we chose the songs, we wanted to have the sense of what the girls themselves would listen to if they, in their world. So the music that we chose first is all female, except one featuring male voice. And all of the women are under the age of 35. And almost all of them are Kenyan except for one Zambian musician. And because it was important to make the lens of the film very feminine, it was just as important to make the soundtrack of the film very feminine. And so we very carefully chose these songs for the world with the help of our music supervisor, Patricia Kehoro. Yes, I think that all of the musicians that we approached have been very gracious, and they loved the fact that we used the music. But we have to, Nairobi is very progressive. Despite what the Kenya Film Classification Board like to think or are trying to impose, we have such a contemporary vibe, and we're such a young, internet-connected space of people, and we know what's happening in the world. We're able to have conversations. We're able to watch all sorts of content. And it's never been a problem. So the musicians were not worried by the context of the film. They knew that it's a piece of art. And as such, they wanted to be part of that piece of art. And we're so grateful that they were, because it's made a world of a difference having their music in the film. So after you make a film, you have to get it classified by the Kenya Film Classification Board. So we presented our film to the Kenya Film Classification Board for a classification, hoping that we would get an 18 rating, because we believe that the Kenyan audience is mature enough and discerning enough to be able to deal with that subject matter. They have the ability, they're old enough to vote, so we believe they're old enough to watch the film. Unfortunately, the Kenya Film Classification Board did not feel that the themes and the film itself were good for a Kenyan audience. So they decided to restrict the film, which meant we cannot broadcast, exhibit, distribute, or possess the film within the Republic of Kenya. I think that one of the things that we would love, and not only myself, but also the other filmmakers that are in Cannes, that are either under house arrest or are facing such discrimination because of the work that they're creating, is to support the voices of artists. Art is art. And to be able to say that everybody has the right to freedom of expression, especially in countries that have a constitution that ensures it. And any support is good support. And any person within the filmmaking community who feels that this is an important struggle should just even tweet any social media support to say we have the right to freedom of expression. Really helps the government see that this is a larger issue. It's not about banning a single film. It's about repressing ideas and stories. And I feel like that in itself goes against the human spirit, because humans are stories.